with no further ado, please welcome Peter Ballerstedt.
Interesting. This is not my normal voice. It's okay. Bring whatever showed up that day. Howdy, everybody. Much better. Thank you. My name is Peter Ballerstedt. My topic.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that would be handy. You know that strange sensation when you know you forgot something? Good. Never mind. Metabolic syndrome, malnutrition, and sustainability. I want to give a little different information, but believe me, my intention is to make people feel better about feeling better. I want people to value your own health more than some of the other messages that we hear coming against us. Another way to put it is no, eating animal source foods won't ruin the planet. Now, I know I'm in the land of the Ruminati. I'm in a land where I probably don't need to explain what a ruminant is and does. Okay, maybe there's a few of you. We can do that later. But if you're not familiar with forages and hay judging, the taste test is not part of a hay judging contest. I have no disclosures by my understanding, but you know, show me a man without a point of view and I'll show you a corpse. Right? I'm an advocate for therapeutic carbohydrate reduction in ruminant animal agriculture. I get to do that in many different audiences in many parts of the world. I've worked in forage agriculture for most of my life, and I currently work for a forage seed company, although I'm not here in any capacity as a representative of that company. So just to let you know who's talking to you today. My training as an agronomist meant that I was trained in the sciences that deal with healthy soils and healthy plants. My minor and my doctorate was in ruminant nutrition. So learned about healthy animals and animal nutrition. And then I had my own personal health journey. Anybody else here had their own personal health journey? Either some of you are asleep or sorry. We'll work on that. In 2007, I was a 51-year-old balding, obese, pre-diabetic. Today, I'm just balding. Keto ain't a miracle, y'all. But I'm here to tell you that when you improve your health, you are improving the world. You heard it at one of the previous panels about how to encourage, you're worth it. Improving your health is probably the most practical and impactful thing you can do for the world. Oh yeah, one other thing that happened to me today besides being sick, my glasses broke. So these are my computer glasses. What a day. So I'm here to confess. Is this a good place for confession? Good, okay. I agree with Dean Ornish. It's okay. What's good for you is good for our planet, says Dr. O. I agree with him. I suspect we differ on the details. Brandolini's Law. The amount of energy necessary to refute male bovine fecal matter is an order of magnitude greater than to produce it. And yes, it's a plant-based beef patty. If you ever have someone come to you and ask you questions about environmental impact from eating animal source foods, please contact me. I have resources, I have papers, I have contacts, and much of what I do in life is to try to put out information to clean up the male bovine fecal matter, but it's seemingly a never-ending job. The notion that raising livestock and consuming animal source food, milk, dairy products, meat, fish, and eggs is fundamentally incompatible with sustainable development is flawed. This is a wonderful paper. By the way, my PDFs will be posted, but this is a direct quote from him, so I used the adjective that he used, flawed. I would use that MBFM, but that's why he has a job like that and I don't. When it comes to the consumption of animal source food, there is such a thing as too little, okay? Animal source food is essential in the human diet for proper development and function, period. Full stop. And there are many, many people who have done the work to demonstrate it, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So it's not a question about none, that's not a question. But there's still this idea that there's too much. And I've got some projects in the works to see if we can't just put an end to that. There is clear evidence of the benefits of animal source food consumption, especially among children and pregnant and lactating women. Why do vegans hate women so much? Can anyone help me with that? We have 2 billion people in the world that suffer from micronutrient malnutrition. 1 in 4 children globally under 5 is stunted. 1 in 5. 1 in 4. And the simple fact is there can be no sustainable food systems without livestock. Now, ruminants rule, but all livestock are critical to global sustainable food systems. Negative perceptions of the role of livestock in many sustainability debates, put quotes around debates, arise from overestimation of the environmental footprint of livestock production, a narrow interpretation of sustainability that focuses on only one factor. If you ever get involved with the conversation and they're not talking about societal and economic factors as well as ecological factors, you're not talking about sustainability. Just understand that. And to focus mainly on overconsumption of animal source food in middle to high income countries. There it is. Right there. The zombie myth. The livestock sector is under pressure at the moment from those in the north. This is somebody from Africa. who say that to save our planet, we must get rid of livestock, and or to save our health, we must stop eating meat. Anybody heard that? Has anybody heard that? Yes. Thank you. Some of us probably do consume too much meat as well as sugars, fats, and highly processed foods. What whiskey tango foxtrot are you saying? You're equating meat with sugars, fats, and highly processed foods? I have no argument with those advocating not over-consuming such foods in rich countries and communities. I do argue strongly against those who say that those who eat so little meat should eat even less. I believe there's no moral equivalence between those who make bad food choices and consume too much animal-sourced food and those many hungry people who, with no food choice at all, consume far too little. This gentleman is the director of the International Livestock Research Institute in Kenya. Why does he feel compelled to acknowledge that argument? Cultural reference time, I hope everybody gets this. Take the blue pill and you'll continue to believe your received narratives and worldviews regarding diet, health, nutrition, agriculture, and the environment, a life of diminished vitality, chronic illness, and meditation awaits. Or you could take the red pill, enter the world of true lifestyle medicine, and we will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. A life of new possibilities awaits you and billions of others. Virtually everything we were taught about human nutrition is so demonstrably flawed. And I come from a world of animal nutrition, where we actually practice science. And let's introduce ourselves to a world where 1 egg a day can grow a better human brain. And they've done this work. It's available for reference. Sustainable livestock systems to improve human health, nutrition, and economic status. Sustainable livestock systems contribute to food security, economic and environmental stewardship, and sociocultural needs, and are vital for achieving most of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I hope it doesn't feel as bad to listen to me as it does to speak. Livestock production contributes to sustainability through use of uncultivatable land for food production, conversion of energy and protein sources that cannot be used by humans into highly nutritious animal-sourced food, and reduce the environmental pollution from agro-industrial byproducts, while generating income and supporting livelihoods of millions of people all over the world. Beyond and impossible, don't do this. Some livestock systems are particularly effective at carbon sequestration and hence reducing greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global warming. Livestock production offers the greatest potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture, and animal scientists have devised several effective strategies that can reduce such emissions from livestock systems by up to 30%. Most of the current discourse on sustainability focuses on one, albeit important factor, the environment. Equally important factors are the need to ensure food and nutrition security for the growing global population in a culturally acceptable manner that ensures its accessibility, affordability, and safety. impossible, and beyond can't do that. But we live in a world where so many people only have a hammer. And so here's a tweet from The Lancet. Half of people worldwide who need insulin to treat type 2 diabetes will not receive it in 2030 unless access is improved. If only there was some demonstrably proven lifestyle intervention that could reduce type 2 diabetics' need for insulin. Only there was some way. But if all you got is a hammer, unexpectedly, we found that the pharma industry, on average, is a higher intensity emitter than the automotive industry. Also, we have found a much greater variability among the pharma industry than the automotive industry. By the way, who makes the supplements? Greenhouse gas impact of moving to a lower meat diet is offset by pharmaceutical use. This is fun. If the average American type 2 diabetic could eliminate their medication use, they would reduce their carbon footprint 29% more than if they shifted from a high meat to a vegan diet. Now tell me which one is sustainable. You know why veganism has such growth? Because they only count the new ones. They don't do it on a net basis. They gotta keep getting new ones because nobody can stay on it. So just from a sustainability, stay on it kind of idea. But then there's things like this. If only there were some way. Only there was some way for a type 2 diabetic to eliminate their medication need. Has anybody heard of such a thing? While reducing and eliminating glycemic control medications, Virta patients lowered A1C by 1.3% on average after 1 year, improved insulin resistance measured by a HOMA-IR. 60% of patients attained an A1C below 6.5 without the use of diabetes-specific medications. If only there were some way. 5% of all traffic is now caused by the National Health Service. See, healthcare has an environmental footprint. Why don't we talk about that? Food is essential. Can I get an amen? Thank you. Healthcare is optional. We know in animal science that a great deal of veterinary care is avoided by proper nutrition. I don't know what happened in medical school. Both professions wear white coats, which produces more greenhouse gases. Well, this is just a little bit of evidence for later use. Perhaps it'll come up. All of agriculture in the United States is accounted for about 9% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. Anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. 9. Of that, livestock agriculture is 4. Somebody help me with the math. What's 9 minus 4? Wow. So is 5 larger or smaller than 4? So the people that are advocating for us to eat less animal source food must be advocating for us to eat more plant-sourced food, which is already a bigger emitter than, and beef is 2% of U.S. total. Healthcare is 10. Healthcare is projected to be producing more emissions than agriculture. That's awkward. Here's an aspirational goal for all of us, I think. We should all strive against the generation and propagation of unnecessary human suffering and pain. Can I get an amen? Thank you. Death is inevitable, but a life of protracted ill health is not. Chronic disease prevention and control helps people to live longer and healthier lives. See, my point here is that when we're talking about metabolic syndrome, we're talking about malnutrition. When we talk about all the chronic diseases that are now plausibly related to hyperinsulinemia, we're talking about malnutrition. It's just most of the policy and most of the experts in different fields, they don't hook those together yet. Working on it, see what we can do. But at the end of the day, you can tell when idols are being worshiped because human beings get sacrificed. And there's a whole lot of idol worship going on. We're not real good at seeing it either because, the ones that we agree with, we're more likely to give them a pass, but it's every bit as much. It's what makes it so tricky. 2 billion people suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. 151 million children under 5 suffer from stunting. Millions more have impaired cognitive development related to poor nutrition, partly due to insufficient consumption of animal-sourced food. Why are we even still talking about this? Animal-sourced foods supply multiple bioavailable nutrients that are lacking in the cereal-based diets of the poor. Cereal-based diets, that's what they want us to eat, right? It's awkward. Yet reports like the one recently published by the Eat Lancet Commission solely focus on the threat of animal-sourced food consumption on sustainability and human health, overestimate and ignore the tremendous variability in the environmental impact of livestock production, and fail to adequately include the experience of marginalized women and children in low and middle income countries whose diets regularly lack the necessary nutrients. Why do these people hate women and children so much? Claims about the health dangers of red meat are not only improbable in the light of our evolutionary history, they're far from being supported by robust scientific evidence. Less than 1/3 of the world's population is well fed. Now, we could quibble about their definition, and I suspect we'd find some differences. 11% of GDP is lost annually from Africa and Asia from poor nutrition. Talk about sustainable development. Healthcare for obesity, they've pegged this at $2 trillion. I'd want to check that out because I have a report that puts the healthcare cost for obesity-related diseases in the United States at $1.72 trillion, which is like 9.3% of GDP. And we can plot stunting against meat consumption. And yes, it's associational, but I'll go with it. Pretty clear evidence that you get down below a certain level of meat consumption and you get increasing levels of stunting. And this isn't just physical stature, this is brain development. Tricky thing about a brain, it develops in stages, and if you miss one of those stages, you can never make it up. So you've just induced a lifelong decrement to that human being. Oh, and just for reference, this is where Eat Lancet wanted us to be. A level of meat consumption well down here in the high stunting zone. If somebody says to you that we should be eating plant-based diets, humanity's diet is already plant-based, and maybe that's the problem. What do you think? 84% of the world's, that wasn't the button I wanted, 84% of the world's calories come from plants, 64% of the world's protein comes from plants, and by the way, plants are a poor source of protein for human nutrition. They're great for ruminants, and ruminants are a good source for us. Works out nicely. But yet we treat them as if they're the same, right? Show of hands, how many people here know that when you see protein on a label, it's not really protein? Learning moment, it's actually crude protein. If you want to know why that's important, talk to me later. But it's not what my brethren in swine production utilize to balance the rations for the pigs that they're growing. Pig farmers know better how to feed their piglets than human nutritionists know how your child should be fed. If you're okay with that, great. Not me. So let's take a little time here. Animal versus plant source foods. If these are just simple statements, right? We should understand this. Isocaloric quantities of energy from plants versus animals are not isometabolic. What I mean is, if I gave you 100 calories of energy from plants, which means it would be sugar or starch, that's not going to have the same metabolic effect on the human being as 100 calories of 100 calories coming from animal source food, which would be fat, right? Okay? And protein and minerals, equal amounts, again, will not have the same metabolic effect. Animal source foods are superior to plant source foods. Our needs for vitamins are completely dependent on the rest of our diet. They're not independent. Look, if you can't get it from animal source food, you don't need it. I'm waiting for the twitches. It's okay, you can talk to me later, but that's one of my beliefs. The environmental footprint associated with the production of animal versus vegetal, I like that. Protein-containing food products needs to be reevaluated on the basis of content of essential amino acids in foods. Still haven't begun to do this. But when we do, we find that they come pretty close. If you let somebody else frame the argument, guess what? They'll frame it to favor their argument. What a surprise. Here's some sustainable development goals, these specific due to nutrition. This is sort of the list of shame. Again, we have almost a quarter of children under 5 stunted. We have 7.5% of children wasting away, calorically underfed. Same time, we have almost 6% overweight globally. A third of women of reproductive age globally are anemic. Obesity, 13% globally. Now, unfortunately, the people that are doing this are wholly believing that obesity and overweight is the result of eating too much and not exercising enough. So one of my goals is to see if we can't get them to consider metabolic syndrome in there. Because as I said before, I think metabolic syndrome is another manifestation of malnutrition. We're not feeding the human being appropriately. It's hard to get estimates for this, so I've got estimates anywhere from 25 to over 50% of the global population. When does it transition from an epidemic to a pandemic? Here's one, it came up earlier, protein and muscle health during aging, benefits and concerns related to animal-based protein. Biology ain't fair. Us old farts, we need more. Sorry, Junior, I need that T-bone more than, no. But here's an example. We have these positive statements. Individuals aged at least 65 years, rapidly growing segment of the population. Between now and 2100, the entire growth in the global population is going to come from people in the upper age ranges. The figures say it's going to be exactly the same number of children, 15 and under, in 2100 as there is today. Age-related loss of muscle mass and strength continue to have a significant economic impact unless dietary or exercise interventions are implemented. I wonder what those could be. Increasing the ratio of animal-based protein relative to plant-based protein in the diet may help to mitigate age-related losses, muscle mass. Okay, and then we get, see, this is what drives me to distraction. Why did these people feel compelled to put this in this paper? We've got to get these myths killed. So some summary statements. Animal source foods are superior forms of nutrition to plant source foods. Period. Full stop. Should not be a debate. And this is me. The preponderance of evidence from all scientific disciplines strongly suggests that the most likely harm associated with animal source food consumption is from not consuming enough. Let's put it another way. If you took the naked nutritional epidemiology of chronic disease, that's the acronym NECD. Well, NECD is the acronym. I can't help myself. I've got to pronounce it naked. As in emperor. If you take away the naked, quote, data, unquote, what's left against animal source food consumption? And of course, we just got those papers from the Annals of Internal Medicine, didn't we? They have no evidence of significant strength. So it'll be interesting to watch them twitch around all that. But I'm just an agronomist. I'm not a doctor, that kind of doctor. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But this is my prescription. If you want to find me, I am accessible on social media. You can please email me. Please feel free to contact me. Thank you for coming to this. I do want each of you to understand. I think my friend Dr. Barry says it this way. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. And it's our individual job to be concerned about us individually and then let that ripple out. I've got one saying about grow where you're planted. We're here for a reason, wherever that is. We're equipped for a specific purpose, whatever that is. Good luck finding yours. I'm still looking for mine. I think I've got a pretty good lock on it, but I'll tell you, we just got a new pastor. And I had to spend a long time before I went and had the conversation with him. But when we heard that his doctor had told him that unless he lost some weight, he was going to suggest some bariatric surgery, I figured that was the spiritual 2x4 upside my head. That it was time for me to go have a conversation with the man. Consequences be damned. So I grabbed extra copies, or no, they weren't extras, but I grabbed copies of Gary Taubes's Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, and Michael and Mary Dan Eads' Protein Power Life Plan. And I went over and I had a conversation. That was only a couple weeks ago, and I've heard since I've been on this trip, because I'm on my way home from South Carolina, he's apparently lost 5 pounds. But we got to do the work. So if I can do anything to encourage you in your work, if I can do anything to answer some of the negative ideas that come against you about eating all that animal source food, please feel free to contact me. Thank you for your attention. And I'm going to be doing the elbow bumping for the rest of today and maybe most of tomorrow, but I plan to be here throughout the rest of this conference. And it's not because I don't want to shake your hand. It's just I am trying not to share. So thank you very much.
Peter Ballastet, everybody. Peter Ballastet.